are going to get started. All right, so just to introduce myself again, for those who don't know, I'm Delbert Tyler. I'm the president of Tyler Collier Associates CPA firm. We also have on here Terry Collier, who's the founder and also an owner of Terry Collier Associates as vice president. We also have Amber Spells, who's a tax professional and EA, enrolled agent, and also has a master's degree in taxation, who's a part of our team. And we also have John Harris from Harris Financial, which we've worked with a lot in doing services for our clients in the financial planning and insurance areas. So with that being said, the John, Terry, and Amber are the only ones that are not muted, so they can participate at any time. I am going to go through a format of information that the four of us have researched this week and trying to bring that information to each of you today. And so if you watch the screen that I have, and I messed up this morning, so hopefully I won't mess up again. I forgot that I was working on the screen and people couldn't see what I was talking about. So I'm gonna try to do better. So Congress has this stimulus package that they have enacted called CARES, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. And there's two phases, so there's a lot to, and actually there were a couple of acts and notices that have been enacted over this week, well, last week and this week. But we're going to focus on the ones that actually we think affect business and affect you, our clients. And that's the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, I refer to it that way, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL. And this session will be interactive. I'm going to go through a set of information to inform, and then we're going to open up for questions and answers so that we can make sure that everybody's got the most up-to-date information. Things are changing fast. Things that we heard on Wednesday are not true on Friday. So stay with us. All right, so on March 27th, Congress approved $2 trillion of relief. Some of this was to go to individuals with $1,200 and, dependent. We are not going to necessarily cover that piece today, but what we are going to cover is what's in bold there, the $500 million of loans and investment in businesses. That's the main purpose for what we're going to talk about, but there was a lot that was in that act. The two main things, again, are the Paycheck Protection Program, which is being administered by banks, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL. So first, the PPP, Congress authorized just about $3.5 billion for loans to small businesses for their employees. Some of these loans actually will be forgiven. If you meet the requirement, a lot of these loans will be forgiven. They're up to 4%, so we see a number of them, depending on the bank, may fall below the 4% fixed rate interest. They're deferred for 6 to 12 months out. And again, the forgiveness of portion or all of those dollars are possible. For the portion that is not, there are favorable terms, low interest rate, and the term is up to a 10-year term. And therefore, that forgiveness and how this is actually going to work, and we talked about this earlier this morning as well. So you ask for a loan and you ask for this loan, it's 2.5 times what your average payroll has been, and that gives you what your loan amount is. Subsequent to this, and this is the banks are working through these issues, you have to show how you use those dollars. And so if you use those dollars for mostly payroll, most of those dollars will be forgiven. You can use up to 25% of that for other expenses, utilities, rent, those type of expenses, but the cap is at 25%. Okay. Do you qualify to get these loans? There's a long list of people, and they made this a pretty wide, a pretty wide list of people who would qualify. Small businesses with less than 500 employees, businesses that are otherwise meet the SBA size standard. 501c3s, your nonprofits with less than 500 employees, individuals operating as sole proprietors, individuals operating as independent contractors, self-employed people in trade or business, tribal businesses, and veterans under the 501c19. So they made a pretty wide web of people who could qualify. How do you get these loans? And this is for the PPP, is through your lender. So part of the design was not to necessarily make new relationships, but through the bank that you're banking with. Most of those banks are offering, we have talked to Huntington, PNC, and all of them have been working. Today is the first day that you can actually apply. PNC didn't roll out theirs till after 6 o'clock last night, even though they've had little pieces out there. Huntington Bank, we've talked to, have a program, Key Bank, Dollar Bank. So the key is to get with your banker who knows you on how to get this information over to them to fill out the application. Some of them are accepting the government application that has been out at least for a week. Others have created their own applications and their own ways to do this. The PPP is not going through any government agency or the SBA. It is pushed to go through the banks. How much can you borrow? And we talked about this a little bit. It's 2.5 times your monthly average payroll. And again, they're somewhat, and each bank is putting together the requirement on how you pull that together, but the government left that kind of really wide open. You should be looking at not where you are right now, because if you've laid off half of your people because of this crisis, you would probably have a pretty low payroll. You need to look at what that average payroll is, because they're looking to encourage you to rehire your people, to keep your people on, keep them off of unemployment. So you really want to look at what is your payroll. Owners, distributions can also, I understand owners' distributions can also be included in that. Owners' salaries, There is a cap. You can't have an individual in there who's making more than $100,000. So you would back that piece off of there. So if you have an owner who's making $140,000, he can only be in there up to $100,000. Or you have employees who are over that amount, you have to back that off. All right, so that's really the gist of the PPP. And again, we're just looking in summary because most of this we want to have open for dialogue and questions. When you are sending your questions, use the chat to type in your questions. Amber will then read those questions, and then we will look to answer those questions amongst the four of us and whoever else participates in those questions. So the second piece that the government pulled together was the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. You can, this comes through the SBA. You can go on to the SBA's website and fill out the information. You can also request a $10,000 advance. If you're denied for the larger loan, my understanding is that you can still keep the $10,000. But again, it's a loan. Some portion of it can, or all of it can be forgiven as well. So we encourage people to go out there and think about how that loan will qualify. You can also ask for and apply for both. You just can't use both for the same thing. So if you use the PPP for wages, you cannot use the EIDL for wages. They can't be used for the same thing, but you can apply and get approved for both. Whoops, too fast. So again, you know, they put it's assistance up to $2 million. The terms are extremely favorable for businesses, 3.7%, 2.7% for nonprofits, and potentially they're long-term, up to 30 years can be the term. But they will look at that on a case-by-case basis. The other thing, if you haven't been to the SBA's website and began to fill out this information, the first part of the information is very general. They will ask you for your last year through January. They will ask you for your income and your cost of goods sold. They will also ask you a lot of personal information, but the majority of the application for the loan will come through, I talked to SBA yesterday, will come through communication over either phone, but probably very little phone, but through email, where they will require you to send them more information and more requirements before that loan.
We have a question regarding PPP.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the question for PPP is twofold. One, the first part is, when calculating payroll, do we include federal, state, local taxes? And the comment to that was that early requirements did not include federal tax portion.
Right. So my last piece that I've heard on that, because I heard the initial that it was not, and if you look at some of the data that was out there provided by the government, it said you could not include it. The last bit of information that I've received is that you can include it. The caution is that, you know, because all of this is still developing, the caution is that if you include it And then when it comes to the justification and they've decided they didn't want it in there, you will have that at some risk of not being forgiven.
And then the other question for that is, what about 1099s? Can we include, and can these be forgiven?
My understanding is that the 1099 employees can be included and also can be forgiven. All right, on the screen, I have also put in some resources to the government websites that you can click on and get more detail, more of the application. So take a moment and write some of those down, or take a screenshot, and so you have that information. I am also now going to switch my screen and put some information up on the screen. Give me 1 second to find it. I found it. I'm moving it.
Amber, can I ask you a question? This is John Harris.
Okay.
Yeah, the question I had was, I don't think you can include 1099 people in your payroll. And the reason is they're independent contractors and they would have to apply themselves for relief.
So
Do you agree?
my understanding of that is that there's two folds. There are people who pay their 1099 folks through payroll, and I believe that they will qualify under those circumstances. But if you have a true 1099 person who invoices you, and you're not paying them through payroll, you should encourage them to do the PPP for themselves.
Correct.
Okay, that's right. That's a critical distinction. All right, so yeah, we have to make that clear that I guess in essence there's two types of 1099 independent contractors or employees, right? Some are in your payroll, so they're considered an employee. If they're not in your payroll, then you wouldn't include them. Is that right? Is that what we're saying?
You would encourage them.
They're still not an employee, but some people pay because it's easier, and they issue 1099s to them through through that process, that they could do it that way. However, it is still encouraged for 1099 folks to do it themselves.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the questions I would ask my banker when we're going through this, because that's I would call that a gray area at this point.
It's one of those developing areas. Yep.
Yeah. So that could be a red flag, just to handle that properly. Because I receive 1099 income myself, but and I pay 1099 to some people, or I issue those. So I have to be very careful with that, with respect to including that in my applications.
Right. I also that telephone call was PNC calling me. They are not finished with their applications and won't be accepting applications today. So if you bank with, get with your banker, but he distinctly told me they're not finished and won't be accepting applications today.
Okay.
Okay, so what I've also put up on the screen, actually, that wasn't what I wanted to put up on the screen. Give me a second. Where is that comparison?
That is it.
It? I don't think that's it. That's
scroll down.
Yeah, this is just.
Oh no, that's not it. Yeah, that's not it.
This is not the comparison.
But it is a PNC document. Yes.
Is it on your next tab?
Well, I'll tell you in 1 second here. Give me a moment. Figure out where my information is. Do we have any other questions while I'm fumbling here?
Yes, we have a, okay, so part of this question, just give me 1 second as I sift through it, because part of the question I want to answer privately. Okay, no, I don't need to answer it privately. Okay, so the question is, if you have relationships with 2 banks, should you pick one over the other for filing the application, or can you file through both for the application? And my understanding, and Albert and John, you can, and Terry, chime in if you have another thought. My thought with this is that you can apply through both. If one denies, then you have the other. But if one disperses faster than the other, then you would need to withdraw from the other.
Right.
Yeah. I would decide where my closest banking relationship is. And if I can get to a bank, if I can be exchanging emails with a person at the bank instead of just going into the general email, I would focus on the person that I can have the direct contact with. And that's how I would make my choice among the banks. So yeah, it's going to depend on the nature of both of those relationships, I think. But the idea is to be exchanging emails with someone that can work on your case. And so that's the relationship that you want to, you want to prioritize that, I think. That's my 2 cents. What do you think, Terry?
In agreement.
Yeah, I think you want to go where you're going to get some good information, because you have a relationship, and someone who's just not going to think of you as one of those numbers that are coming through the door.
Right. And you'll be able to tell because you're going to reach out to both of them and you'll see what kind of responses you get. And then at some point, I think you're going to have to make a choice.
I just want to let you know that that PNC seems to be one of the slower banks in this process, that the other banks are ahead of them on these applications.
Yeah, I can see how PNC would be swamped.
Well, they are
so many people.
Right, they are a pretty big bank. They are.
Yeah.
They cover a lot of ground, so sometimes that hurts them.
Yeah. So, if you can deal with a smaller bank and you can have a closer relationship, and I would tend to go that way. I don't think that this is backed by the federal government, so the bank doesn't have a lot of risk here. So it's not going to be a question of PNC is going to accept me, but Dollar Bank isn't. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they'll both will accept you. I think the important thing is where's the relationship closest so you can get the service that you need.
The issue that I got from Dollar Bank is that they believe that this funding, that the PPP will be oversubscribed. And if you're at the end of the line, the money will not be available for you.
At least not the first phase, if they're working on the second phase.
Yeah.
Right, and so when you think through that, what we don't understand is how those dollars are actually being distributed to the banking institutions, and how much each bank has available or not available. We do not understand that process. So I think the sooner and the earlier you can get with your banker, the better, to find out if you could be in the mix this time. My understanding is Congress is already having conversations and meeting about the next phase of this. Because if we listen to the news, like I listened coming in, this is not about to get any better.
Yeah. Is there any talk about replenishing these two particular programs, should they, be fully exhausted?
I think the PPP is what they're talking about right now.
Okay.
At least that's what I've heard. The PPP is what they're looking at putting some more money out there for.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
All right. So what I have up on your screen, I found it, is a comparison between the two. And as you can see, the PPP, again, has the forgiveness attached to it. It has no collateral, no guarantee, 2.5 times your average payroll. And at the end of the day, you either have a very good, favorable terms for repayment, or it's forgiven. Your EIDL loan has some different terms, so you can go up. The PPP only goes up to $100,000. The EIDL can go up to $2 million, but anything over 200,000 is going to ask for a personal guarantee. We're going to ask for some guarantees.
Right, and then anything over 25,000 is collateral. You need collateral.
Right.
And the PPP, the max is $10 million.
10 million. Yeah. It's 100,000 per person, Delbert, just to clarify.
Per person, right.
Person, yes, with a maximum of 10 million total.
Right.
So yeah, if you had a large manufacturing company, yeah, you might be bumping up against that. I think for most of small business people, that's not going to be a concern. The maximum is not going to be a concern. But if you're earning, let's say if you have a employee or yourself that's earning 150,000, you're going to be capped at 100.
Right.
For the purposes of making the computation.
Right. Any questions for the comparison and the information that we've covered so far?
What is that address?
And we're going to make this available on the Tyler Collier website.
Yes, later today.
Right.
It'll take my IT guy just a minute to get stuff up and running.
Okay. And have we, with the EIDL,
okay, I'll send it.
people can see here, they're at the bottom of your screen here, Delbert, how to apply. You can see that's the website there. And you're not going to use your banking relationship for that. You're going to go directly to that page and fill out your application and submit it there. Now,
also
maybe
for PNC,
Delbert, yeah, go ahead.
For PNC, even though the banker just called me and told me they're not accepting applications today, they do, if you go to this website, they do have a place where you can tell them that you're interested. And they take some basic information from you and give you a number. So I will also encourage you, if PNC is your bank, to go and fill that information out.
For which program?
The PPP.
Right, okay.
Amber, do we have any other questions? Anybody have any other questions on how this is being administered, what's available, and how you qualify?
As of right now, there's no additional questions.
Okay. Well, then I want to tell everybody to stay safe. You know,
Did you want to go over the, excuse me, Delbert, did you want to go over the Pennsylvania program?
Well, actually, I can post that, and we will have that on the website.
Okay.
The Pennsylvania program is a working capital program. We believe that it existed before, but they have modified it to for these purposes. And actually, let me pull that over as well. Give me a minute and I will pull over that one. In the meantime, actually, there's another phase of the act, which was the unemployment. Amber, you want to speak to the unemployment piece of it in the meantime while I'm...
Okay, so the unemployment, as you know, is normally not available to self-employed folks. Now it is. The recommendation is that you put yourself through this system to start a claim. At the moment, there is not an immediate on disbursements because every state is still waiting for guidance from the federal government on how exactly this is supposed to work. However, the word is that for anyone who's been, truly self-employed and are truly out of work, they're going to utilize either your Schedule C on the gross or your 1099s, what is the word? Accumulation of your 1099s for the basis for your unemployment. And it would fall up under the same unemployment statute that is currently out there for people who are on W-2s.
All right. Any questions there or follow-up?
As of right now, there are none.
Okay.
We have some shy people.
I also have put up the covert working capital access program that the state has that they're also running. My initial reaction and to the application is pretty exhausting. They're asking for a lot of information, for this personal financial statements, et cetera. But there are some favorable rates and terms for the working capital loan. And so we will also post this on our website. So we know this is available as well. This is a little longer process, I believe, to get through with the state. But it is available.
Yeah, it is available. The cap is only 100,000, and but there are some very favorable terms here.
Right.
But in terms of sequencing, we would start with the
PPP.
the two government programs,
Right.
because they're more favorable. But if for some reason those aren't a good fit for you, or you can't get the funding, this would be another potential resource for you to pursue. So I would categorize this as secondary to the federal programs. Work on those federal programs first. Get with your banker if you're considering the PPP. If you want to do the EIDL, you can go directly online to do that. And then Delbert, with respect to helping the clients, they can email either Delbert or Terry or Amber with
Specifics?
yeah, specifics, because we've done a general broad overview, but everybody's situation is going to be different, and we want to make sure that any solutions that we discuss are custom fit to your situation.
Correct. So, you know, we have all this information, and I'm sure some of this stuff will change every day for the next week until the banks and everyone decide how they're going to distribute these funds. You know, the challenge also for the banks is even after these funds are distributed, what they're going to do on the forgiveness. And actually, I think that's probably a bigger task for them to keep up with. So I'm sure they have that in mind, that, you know, getting this money in your hands, because this was the reason the government had did this, to stimulate the market, to stimulate, you know, payroll, so that people, you know, even though we've got to stay home, that people can get right back to work. And so they wanted to get money in people's hands pretty quickly. The forgiveness piece, I think the banks are going to need to work through that with the government on the backside, and hopefully it will be as favorable.
Right. So the action step for today is to reach out to your banking relationship as soon as you can, I would say.
Right.
You may not get service today, but try and get something in the queue, make some type of a contact, so you can stay on top of this, and try and get working with an individual that you can get their email address and you can be exchanging emails with, if possible.
Right. Okay. I want to thank everyone for participating. I want everyone to stay safe, and God bless you all.
All righty.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome, Marilyn.